When manufacturers describe bike sizes as small, medium or large, or use measurements like 51, 54 or 56 centimeters, these aren't standardized. So understanding a geometry chart is crucial for comparing bikes from different brands and finding the perfect fit for your riding style. But what do all those numbers on a geometry chart mean and how do they affect your ride? Well, in today's video we'll break that down and highlight the most important numbers you should pay attention to when buying a new bike. Without further ado, let's get into it. Let's start with the two most fundamental elements of frame geometry: the stack and reach. Knowing those two lets you compare different manufacturers and determine if the bike will fit you regardless of the seat tube measurement. Stack is measured vertically from the bottom bracket to the top of the head tube, indicating how tall the frame is. It affects the rider's posture, with higher stacks providing a more upright and comfortable position. Endurance road bikes typically have a greater stack than race-orientated road bikes, for example. Reach is measured horizontally from the bottom bracket to the top center of the head tube, showing how long the frame is. It affects how stretched out or compact a rider feels, influencing comfort and control. For example, performance race bikes usually have a longer reach than endurance bikes to improve aerodynamics. To get an idea of how aggressive a bike's riding position is, you can calculate the stack to reach ratio, the STR, by dividing the stack by the reach. This ratio typically ranges from 1.4 by 1 to 1.6 by 1, with a higher value indicating a more upright bike. However, this ratio is only useful when comparing bikes of similar sizes, as it changes with the size of the bike, so always keep that in mind. And the main limitation of stack and reach is that they only consider the front of the bottom bracket. If two frames have the same reach but different seat tube angles, the effective reach changes, which isn't accounted for. This is why it's important to look at more numbers in the geometry chart of your next dream bike. The seat tube angle is the angle of the seat tube in relation to the ground, typically between 71 and 75 degrees. Imagine measuring this angle against a straight line between the front and rear dropouts. Well, why is this important? The seat tube angle affects the saddle placement, which determines the rider's default position on the bike, crucial for fit and handling. Slack angles with a lower number are common in bikes designed for an upright position, like touring and commuter bikes, suiting riders who pivot rearwards. Steeper angles with a higher number are found in performance bikes like triathlon, track and mountain bikes, helping maintain weight distribution and improve climbing. The seat tube length is measured from the bottom bracket to the top seat tube junction, called center, or the top tube seat tube, called center top. So why does this matter? Historically, the seat tube length determined a bike's size, but modern designs and compact geometry have changed this. But the seat tube length still remains important. A, for understanding the lowest saddle position, which is crucial when sizing up, for example, and B, determining how much a saddle can be lowered with a dropper seat post. The head tube length is measured from the bottom to the top of the head tube. It can give a general idea of how upright a bike is designed to be, but it is not the most important factor of fit, since additional stack can be achieved with more stereo tube, spacers or a taller stem. But the angle of the head tube is quite important. The head tube angle is the angle of the head tube relative to the ground. A steeper angle gives you quicker handling, while a slacker angle gives you more stability, especially on descents. A typical head angle for a road race bike is 73 degrees. Sportive bikes usually have a slightly slacker head angle of 72 degrees. Mountain bikes have a slacker head tube angle than road bikes, providing greater stability on rough technical trails. Downhill bikes, for example, typically have head tube angles between 62 and 64 degrees. Ideally, a bike's handling characteristics would be the only factor of a bike manufacturer in determining the head tube angle. However, to avoid toe overlap, meaning a rider's toes catch the front wheel during wide turns, in smaller frame geometries, the head tube angle is sometimes reduced to move the front tire farther from the rider's feet. This design compromise can affect handling in smaller bikes compared to larger ones of the same model, just to give you a little nerd talk. The fork rake, also known as fork offset, is the distance from the steering axis to the center of the front axle. Imagine drawing a line directly through the head tube to the ground and then measuring the distance from that line to the front axle. The fork rake directly affects the trail, meaning how a bike steers, but we'll discuss that in a moment. More rake reduces the trail, while less rake increases the trail. Now about the trail. It is the distance between the contact path of your front tire and the point where the steering axis meets the ground. A longer trail provides less steering leverage, keeping the steering response more aligned with the bike's direction. It is ideal for high-speed riding with less concern for low-speed maneuverability. Bikes with a longer trail have shallower head angles and less fork rake, making them stable at high speeds, but potentially a bit boring. A shorter trail is more nimble and agile, better for slower speeds and tight turns, like in urban areas. Bikes with shorter trail have steeper head angles and more fork rake, making them quick to handle, but possibly nervous and twitchy. In general, keep in mind, bike handling is influenced by the trail, the head tube angle, the fork rake and the wheelbase. Changing the head tube angle or fork rake significantly impacts handling, summarized by the trail. The chainstay length is measured horizontally from the bottom bracket to the rear wheel dropouts. It affects the wheelbase and bike handling. Longer chainstays improve stability and create a longer wheelbase, while shorter chainstays offer sharper handling. The wheelbase is the distance between the front and rear dropouts. It is influenced by the head tube angle, fork rake, frame reach and chainstay length. A longer wheelbase provides stability and comfort, while a shorter wheelbase ensures sharper handling. For example, touring and endurance road bikes have longer wheelbases than performance models. Similarly, cross-country mountain bikes have shorter wheelbases compared to enduro or downhill bikes. The bottom bracket drop is how low your bottom bracket sits relative to your wheel axis, influencing your bike's handling. A lower drop improves cornering, responsiveness and leaning due to a lower center of mass. Conversely, higher drop offers stability at lower speeds and straight lines, but can feel hesitant in corners, providing a smoother ride. However, watch for your pedal clearance. A lower drop means closer pedals to the ground, which can be problematic. You don't want your pedals scraping the ground when you're cornering. Track bikes and velodromes often have a higher bottom bracket drop for this reason, like 55 to 65 millimeters. They rely more on leaning into corners than turning the handlebars sharply, whereas a road bike typically has a bottom bracket drop greater than 65 millimeters. Balance bottom bracket drop with trail for front end handling. Bottom bracket drop is different from bottom bracket height, crucial for bike clearance over obstacles, especially in mountain biking. Drop remains consistent regardless of the tire size. And there you have the most important numbers of a bike geometry chart. But always keep in mind, if you change one aspect of the geometry of a bike, it affects all the other aspects. So just looking at one number isn't enough, you always need to see the bigger picture. And another important aspect, which I know you don't want to hear, but I will say it anyway, the geometry of a bike will help you find the perfect fit, but remember to match it to your riding style. If you're not racing, a racing bike is not the right fit. Its aggressive position can cause back pain when only used on leisurely rides, and instead you might opt for an endurance bike, for example. So always keep in mind, the bike should match your style. And that's it. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you found this video helpful. And if you did, we'd really appreciate it if you give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel. That way you support and help us to create more content like this. Well, until next time, catch you out on the roads.